I've gone through the phase inverter and components for V1, and all of the resistors measure fine. I may revisit the plates in the output just because they are very precisely matched, and sometimes it's good to introduce a little bit of unmatching there. Though too much can be made of that because you can get everything just so, and then you change a tube and the ratio changes because triodes of a 12AX7 are never precisely matched. And so you may have wildly different results with different tubes. So you can only kind of go for an approximation. Some of the dumbbells like the Tweedledees let you dial that in on a cathodione phase inverter, but it's a bit beyond the pale for this. So I'm now looking here at this card that has the add-on top boost circuit, and three things first come to mind. Number one, the pots, which are some form of import. They're not alphas, but they're similar construction. They came with this kit that he got, and they did not come with toothed washers. And both for improved shielding and better connections, they're going to get tooth washers. I have confirmed that there is space for that, even with the panel that goes over it. Second of all, this electrolytic capacitor here is a generic 33 microfarad 350 volt, and it seems to be fine, but since everything else in the amp is high quality FNT and Sprague, I'm going to put in this 33 microfarad 350 volt Nishikon that is rated to 125 degrees and like 10,000 hours. It's a better choice, and it's actually physically, well, it's a bit larger in diameter, a bit smaller in length, tiny bit smaller in length. It won't structurally be any real change, but it is a known good quality cap. So that's what we're going to put in there. But the issue that concerns me, let me change the angle of this, are the blue and yellow heater wires, because this blue wire going over to pins 4 and 5 is right up against that grid connection, and that grid connection is right where the shielding ends. So there's no shielding right there, and that blue wire for the heater is right up against that grid. And so what I need to do is I want the heaters to approach from the up against the plate here, so to come underneath this terminal strip and approach in this corner with metal on both sides and go to pins 4 and 5 over here away from the grid, and then I'm going to run the connections to pin 9 on this side of things, well away from any of the connections on the tube. And in order to make that work, because this thing sits in here like this, and I want it to snake right up here, I need both need a longer length of wire, and I think it'd be good for me to snake the connections beneath this tag board here, going to these same connections on this tube, which you cannot see. And they connect right here. So I think rather than having this be up in the air next to other things and running semi-parallel to this grid connection, it needs to go up against the chassis and then just kind of snake its way in and sneak up on the tube. Now, due to the way this is constructed, I'm going to have to remove the tube socket to do this. Fortunately for me, it is a bottom mount socket that has a tube base up top added on. So I can remove this tube shield base from the top and have the whole thing come out. And since I have the pots loose and I can disconnect this terminal strip, I can access pins 4 and 5 to rebuild this the way I think it should be done. And at that point, the heaters will only be going close to ground stuff, well away from the grids on that tube. Now there is this connection here going to lug 3 on the base pot. Base pot? Yeah. I think so. Yeah, base pot. And the other end of that is going to ground. Okay, not a concern. So that's the ground connection. It's looking at these things upside down, it's easy to get turned around. Sorry for the inadvertent poetry. And this cap here, which is probably a 47 picofarad rather, it is. It's going to get changed out for a ceramic Vichy as well. So I've got to order those ceramic caps. I have the good quality Nichicon electrolytic already, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think for right now, since I've got to order some caps and I've got to take all this apart, what I need to do to make all this work is I'm going to untop boost this. I'm going to remove all this with the red and black and the yellow and blue and this grid wire that's connected here to the wiper of the treble. And I'm going to move that wire to the wiper of the volume pot here, which will allow me to work on the rest of the amp while I wait for some parts to come together, because this top boost thing will take a bit of time to do. So I'm going to make this a non-top boost AC30 normal from 1963 in the meantime, and get everything else as healthy as possible. Then I will add back in the top boost circuit. Also means that this thing won't be flopping around while I try to do all the other work, because that's how damage happens. So it's always good to have a game plan, and with this out of the way, it greatly simplifies the rest of it. And if I get back that air and complex harmonic series in the output, that'll be there even without the top boost circuit. Then when I add it in, everything will be that much better. So that is my plan for now. And once this is out of the way, this whole top boost add-on, then I can measure everything else in here and see if anything is the wrong value or was mispopulated. Given how over the top good quality the rest of this is, I doubt that he made any mistakes, but I have to know. All right, I've got the top boost stuff out, and while this wire is a bit extra long because it was what was there before, and I may use a different kind of shielding wire when I put the top boost back in. For right now, it's just going straight to the wiper of this volume. So this amp is temporarily the non-top boost 1963 AC36 normal. And that will simplify the troubleshooting. I replaced that generic silver mica with a 1 kilovolt Vichy ceramic there. And I don't want to go too far into it, but ceramic disc caps are not all created the same. The voltage rating matters, the temperature range, and what the capacitance is at different temperatures matters a lot. And so a $2 ceramic disc cap does not sound or behave at all like a 5-cent ceramic disc cap that people may be used to from Radio Shack and stuff. So this will be period correct. It is also the 120 picofarad, not the 100 picofarad that was in there. I'm a little bit concerned about this wire here to this filter cap. It's not going to be that noisy, but I just don't like the look of it. I may see if I can fish it around back somehow and just kind of steer it a bit better. These two caps on the input of the phase inverter, the owner said one of them was microphonic, and I've looked at the connections. The connections look good. I'll tap on it next time I fire it up. It's possible that one or both are microphonic, but there is a connection from the output of the tremolo circuit, which is over here, which has a very, actually it goes from here to the volume on the tremolo, and then from there to here. It's some exposed wire for a little bit of length, a little bit longer than I would like. It might have just been too close to some other stuff without shielding. Like I said before, these are high impedance nodes, and if you get something wrong, that can be an antenna, including microphonics, due to the way capacitance works on cables, And depending on what cable he used, if he used really low capacitance shielded cable, you can get increased handling noise in microphonics. So I may be changing that out for some RG174 that I know and I know that I can trust. Again, none of this is a critique. I've been doing this a lot longer than most people, so it's not like anyone should have been like, aha, everyone knows that. Not that many people know that, and there are things I don't know. I'm still learning every day. I'm not saying I'm a guru. I'm not saying I'm the expert. But in the real world, I suppose, with this outdated technology, I am an expert, and I'm old enough to know this stuff, and I'm young enough to still be able to pick up an MPEG, so I'm at a sweet spot. That 0.0047 cap across that 47K on the output of the Vibe trim channel, I went through my stash and found a new old stock white Mallory 150 M.047, so that's been changed out. I did the leads just the way he did. So that channel should have a bit much more gain. Before I fire it up, I need to give it a ground. I disconnected this wire here. I was looking at all the stuff and trying to find where he had this grounded to chassis. The JMIs have a ground lug on the screw here that holds V1 in place. And this amp did not have that ground lug, and that was not the ground point. And I looked around and I found that he had it all grounded. All the preamp stuff, including the filter caps, the input jacks, all the grounds up here were going to this lug of this terminal strip. And that is not the world's best ground for a couple reasons. Number one, it is a ground made by a terminal strip contacting the chassis. That's not as good as a dedicated ground lug. Number two, this part of the chassis is bolted to this part of the chassis. And it's possible to have an imperfect conductivity there, which can actually work in our favor. Let me explain. On the 65, rather than lifting the ground from V1 and having a ground run from here to here, what I did was the reverse of that. The negative for this filter cap, I moved so it was not on this grounded terminal. I was not using the ground on this terminal. I was just using that one connection to the chassis just to physically hold this in place. And I ran a wire from this negative, which is at this end and loops around, to actually over to here on the chassis, whichever one of these is in this area is tied to ground. I think it's on this side. I'd have to look at the layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this wire over here, and I'm going to move this ground connection, this negative connection on this filter cap, to this unused lug of the terminal strip. So this Vibe trim filter cap will be going to chassis somewhere up here on this part of the chassis, as will the dual 8 for the top boost, normal, and phase inverter nodes. And when the top boost card is back in place, it will also be grounded up here to the chassis. And I think I'm going to make a new chassis ground over here, right by the input jacks. So the distance from the input jack to the chassis ground will be like 3 inches as opposed to like 12 inches, or as in this amp, at least 20 inches, because it went here and then went all the way back here. We've got the new 100 ohm half watt carbon film heater balance resistors running to the cathode. It's supposed to ground. I left that ground lug there. There's no need to redo that. And I moved the negative of the Vibe trim channel filter cap from the grounded part on this terminal strip to the ungrounded lug. And then I ran this black wire. That black wire now goes beneath this board and connects to this ground here. So that Vibe trim filter cap is now grounded along with everything else in the preamp. And I moved the positive connection here beneath this board. So that's a bit neater there. Always a good thing. And I discovered that he built this with only 2 screws holding this entire tag board in place. God bless him, which means that I can remove the 2 screws from the other side and move this out from the wall here if I need to go in here and adjusting the connections here. I did change how things relate up against each other here, so I can play around with the lead dress and chase down any noise and or microphonics in just a bit after I plug it in and see where we're at sound-wise. And I've got the new ground lug here for all the grounds in the preamp, and that connects right here to everything else. So pretty darn close to the input jacks. That should be a nice improvement with a minor change. And I'm looking forward to hearing how this sounds. While I've got it open, and I was looking through all my 47 nanofarad caps to find that white Mallory, I was reminded that I get asked a good bit, have I tried Mojotone Dijon caps? Why don't I use Mojotone Dijon caps? Well, I've got a big bag of the 22s and a big bag of the 47s, and I just rarely find a use for them because they're just so physically huge. These two caps are the same value. These two caps are the same voltage rating, and they sound identical. This one is just very big. It would barely fit on this tag board unless I went from outside to outside. And on some amp builds, it just doesn't fit at all. And if you had two of these next to each other, well, there's just no way to get two of those next to each other. And the 22s are almost as big as this. So while I have them, I rarely find a use for them. I might throw them in a guitar or something. I don't hear any magic to it. And I have A-B'd against Mallory's, I've A-B'd against Phillips Mustards, I've A-B'd against, you name it. Every version of the orange drop, from polypropylene to polyester, the Vichys that I like, Panasonics that I like, all kinds of caps. These are fine. They sound good. They don't sound bad, but they don't sound any better, and it's hard to justify the physical cost and mass of these things, so I rarely end up using them. Anyway, I'm going to go plug this in and see what it's sounding like and track down some stuff that might be happening at this end of things. All right, here is the amp as it is now. For this video, I'm going to be using the phone mic rather than the lav because I don't have time to set it all up in the other room, and the light's not good for this kind of thing in there. And the levels this amp puts out would clip the lav mic. The phone mic can handle it, though it does have compression. Right now the amp is back to the AC36 normal non-top boost circuit. The top boost will be returning to the amp in a few days. For those who don't know, before the top boost came out, there was the Brilliant channel, was what you're about to hear. And a lot of people have never heard the Brilliant channel of the non-top boost AC30. And the amp came out in 63, or maybe it was 64, in 3 different versions: bass, normal, and treble. The treble has a lot less low end. It's very bright. The normal is what you're about to hear. It's what most people are familiar with. The bass model, 3 caps were increased, has a little more low end. It's really not that great for bass either. It just has more oomph on those frequencies. And there was never a top boost version of that as far as I know. And I have the Elias book, or Elias book, and I don't think there was ever a bass with top boost. Anyway, here is the Brilliant channel of the non-top boost AC36 normal. And that hum you hear is because the pickups on the guitar are about 1.5 feet from the power transformer, which is where I have to sit to be able to do this. As I rotate the guitar like that, it decreases. So I'm going to come back to play and then forward to adjust things. So here's the treble volume at noon, cut at noon. Very bright. I turn it up, it gets a little less bright. Turn the cut down, tame it some more. Very cool channel. As you turn it down, of course, the bright cap does more and more, so it can be a bit brittle. But also remember, like the Fender AB763 amp with its bright switch, when these amps were designed, guitars came with 12 gauge flat wound strings. And so if 1963, if you bought a Fender Twin with a Jazzmaster, and that Jazzmaster had flat wound 12s, you might want that bright switch, even though it can be really bright with the same Jazzmaster with round wound 9s, etc. Same for the Brilliant channel, which was designed in 1960 here. They expect you to have heavy gauge flat wound strings, and so it was a nice thing to have. Last time you heard this amp, this channel had a lot of bleed with the volume off. And I got some well-intended suggestions in the comment section on how to fix that. It was, as I suspected, merely a matter of lead dress. And I'll point out what the issue was. This blue wire here is coming off this 470 picofarad or 500 picofarad coupling cap, feeding the input of the volume pot for the Brilliant channel. This red wire is coming from the wiper of the normal channel volume, and it is going to the input of the phase inverter. And so when those wires were up next to each other and they were tucked behind the tag board together and running in parallel and touching, you would have bleed, because the signal would be coming into this volume pot and would jump over to the return from the other volume pot and kind of bypass the volume pot. That bleed's gone now. It's gone on both channels. And since redoing the ground, a lot of the hum that was present in both channels, especially when jumpered, is gone. The amp also, now that the top boost circuit is out and that crosstalk has been eliminated from those two sections, has a lot more high end available all of a sudden than it did before. Now, it's not quite as much as I would like it to have at the max setting. We're not quite to the full air and swirl, and there's some other things I'll be looking at for that. But it is a dramatic increase in the high-end response with that top boost out. It's partially going to be the top boost circuit and some issues it probably has, and partially that bit of lead dress that I fixed up, because in the top boost circuit those things were out of phase with each other. So that bit of bleed right there, in combination with what was coming out of the top boost circuit, would have had some nasty phase relationships. So let me jumper the two channels. In a traditional top boosted AC30, the channels are out of phase, and when you add them, you get more lows and scooped mids. In the non-top boost amp, where they are in phase with each other, they add up like a Marshall. So all the Marshall tricks work. So here's the top boost channel. I'll blend in the normal. That can be a lot of fun. I guess these days one of the most well-known users of a non-top boost AC30 is Daniel Lanois. And Lanois often uses an old gold top with P90s through it. And I wish I had one to demonstrate, because it can be a glorious, glorious sound. Again, when we rotate away from those transformers. Now, neither channel has the gain of the top boost. So let me turn these up a bit more to kind of get into that territory. on YouTube, that might sound very good. What I'm hearing is that while there are great improvements already, I don't have that touch response that I should have with this Telecaster sitting 6 feet from the speaker. I should have that note go into a really nice kind of feedback. I'm going to be playing around with some other things just to get it really great. And once the bedrock of this amp, before we put the top boost back, is really where I want it, then I'll bring the top boost in and I'll know that we have something truly special. Right now we have something truly very good, which is, not too far from where we started, though the lack of the hum as you turn up both channels is very nice. Let me unplug and let you hear the self noise of each channel now that the heaters and grounding have been changed. This bit of excess wire on the Brilliant channel is going to make it a little bit worse than the final product. That's dimed. That's really good. And on the normal channel, that's also really good. Now let me see if those caps at the phase inverter input are microphonic. I think that cap is microphonic. This one ever so slightly, this one much more so. When I tap on the wires attached to either end of it, I'm not getting any noise, only on the cap itself. And that's kind of unusual unless something adjacent to it's got an issue. No. All right, I think the owner is right. I think that cap right there needs to be changed. Can't tell if this one is microphonic or if this one's just picking up the vibrations. This one's got a little bit, but then again, I got that channel on 10. Yeah, he's right. That one needs to be changed. I'll go through and check all of them as we go. So I'm going to change out that cap, and there are a couple of things I want to do in the output section that I will describe after the fact. I want to see if I can get that feedback exactly where I want it to be, get the response just a bit more touch friendly, and that's going to involve a lot of voltage measuring and actual honest to God math. Sorry.